Hello and welcome to season 2 of Sex is Medicine Reboot, your number one sex education podcast. If you are a sexual rebel and spiritual warrior, let's hear it. I am your host, Miss Devi Erickson, and this season, Elena and I will continue bringing you over 27 years of combined expertise in the field of holistic sexual wellness. We have some very awesome guests this season, so make sure you like and subscribe on all your favorite listening platforms and sign up for updates at holisticsexologyinstitute.com so you don't miss a single juicy drop of this wisdom nectar. Hello and welcome back to Sex is Medicine. I am your host, Devi Erickson, and I am so honored and delighted to have you here again. I am always excited to share my incredible guests with you. And today I am particularly excited to share an alumni from our Sex is Medicine show, Rahi Chun, and his beautiful partner, Ariel Szabo. Did I say that right, Ariel? I'm sorry if I butchered that.
It's okay. It's Szabo.
Szabo. Yes, Ariel Szabo. And Rahi, gosh, Rahi, you and I, we were online together like 2022, like a long time ago.
Devi, I think it was more like 2018. It was like, it was back in the Sex is Medicine 1.0 and Organic Sexuality 1.0 days.
Wow. So we have some history here, almost a decade of history. So what an honor and a delight to share time and space with you again. And I'm going to share a little bit about with you with my audience. Sorry, my tongue tied there.
Hey.
So Rahi Chun and Ariel are certified somatic sex educators and sexological bodyworkers devoted to restoring erotic aliveness through conscious touch, deep relational presence, and erotic alchemy. Rahi is internationally recognized as teaching for the art of genital de-armoring. And I want to say internationally recognized. I remember, Rahi, when we've shared your genital de-armoring course through our email, we get emails back like, "Woo, we're so happy to see that you're, supporting Rahi's work, and we love Rahi's work." So you get a lot of positive feedback from our little community when we share your work. So thank you so much. And Rahi has developed an understanding of how developing imprints and our developmental imprints influence our adult sexual expression. Ariel is recognized for her depth of attunement in somatic and erotic work, her integration of plant medicine and pleasure, and her writing at the intersection of sexuality, power, and liberation. Wow. Wow. Yay. And so today we're going to be talking about rewiring intimacy, the nervous system, and consciousness through the body, through divine sacred union, my friends.
Yummy, yummy. Doesn't that sound yummy? I love that.
It really does. And so tell me, what does it mean to rewire intimacy? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a really important question for those of us in any society to ask because, there are certain norms that every society has around sexuality, and it largely comes from a huge absence of accurate and compassionate sex education. And so, the default is people are fumbling around or trying to perform or trying to look good. And so, we're really all about deconditioning and reconditioning both the body as well as the spirit and the psyche as to what's possible with erotic consciousness, when we're really present moment to moment and can be very intentional about the consent of our own bodies and where, like what that connection, like how sacred that connection can be.
Beautiful. And I love you said the words compassionate education. So we don't have comprehensive sex education. We don't have pleasure-based sex education, but you mentioned compassionate sex education. What role does compassion play in our sexuality?
It's a great question. I mean, the word compassionate comes up because I feel like, what we see in our work is that a lot of couples and single folks, they are used to using their body as like a product to squeeze something out of it, right? Oh, I want multiple orgasms, or I want this kind of, this kind of effect rather than, treating that part of the body like your inner child, because that's really, that's really what it deserves is all the compassion and understanding, to be met, to be heard. What does my genitals want to tell me this morning? Why is, rather than a top down, really inviting that the body's wisdom to really inform us in our lovemaking.
Right. And we definitely also need consent-based, pleasure-based education.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love how Rahi you said the consent of our own bodies and how
Mm.
often we override our own bodies in pursuit of this, I want multiple orgasms, I want to squirt, I want to do all these things so that, this idea of what we think we want to achieve sexually versus really being present and listening to the body and having and working with the body as opposed to kind of grinding out. It's like you're talking, it's like
Mhm.
grind culture applied to sex. We're going to grind out this experience and you're going to perform for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and when we work with couples, I mean, intimacy gets lost in that grinding. It gets lost in the performance,
Mhm.
and so, we have couples coming to us who they love each other
Mhm.
and they're wanting more connection. They just don't have never been taught or shown the tools of what is beyond grinding and performance and sexual ego.
Right. And the goal of climax.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Why should climax not be the goal? Because like we read about it in Cosmo, everything in our culture is like it's like you just want to it's the peak, right? You have that climax and then you're done and everybody's happy and satisfied and it usually happens in like 2 minutes and like boom, but that's the goal. So why should climax not be our goal when everything in our on our radar informs us that it should be the goal?
Yeah, well, when we make climax the goal, we set ourselves up for a container of bypassing.
Ooh, yes.
So we're not really actually creating a container for deep attunement and checking in. What is my body actually wanting moment to moment? And we often leave so much, like we miss out on so many possibilities of deepening into sensation, exploring new subtle realms of pleasure. Because if our goal is the climax, right? I think about my own life when I used to be in a mode of like grinding towards climax, I would know exactly how to position myself so that my, vagina and vulva were being hit in a certain way so that I could climax. I would grind towards climax. And when I remove that off the table, I've discovered all these other pleasure points over my whole body and absolutely inside of my vagina that are just like a whole new range of sensations. And they actually lead to a whole new range of types of orgasm and climax as well. But those just come naturally.
So,
Mm.
like a way to kind of for our audience to really imagine, you already know how to grind, and imagine if that's like 1% of the potential that your body has for erotic pleasure. 99% is really being bypassed.
Mhm.
And that gets discovered as when we slow down,
Mhm.
when we pause, when we try different things, when we're not so in a rush or goal oriented, and when we really attune to ourselves and our partner for where that life force wants to take us.
Mhm.
Beautiful. So, sex is a practice, not performance. Tell me more about engaging in sexuality as a practice.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, when we engage in sexuality as a practice, we can use sex to discover more about who we are, like how energy even wants to move through us. We can use that as a container to discover also more about our bodies, like discover all the different erogenous zones and their capacity for holding erotic charge and experiencing pleasure. Um, but we can also use it as a practice for like pleasure-based healing, expanding consciousness, and creating a container where we can allow anything and everything to come up when we're in a sexual exchange, intimate exchange with someone, and when we really do allow everything and anything to come up, sometimes uncomfortable emotions come up or uncomfortable sensations. And to have a space that's holding that and bringing pleasure to those things is really a way to repattern, but also heal things and make love to things, bring love to things that have maybe been cast away or hidden in the shadows or suppressed or unloved, really.
I love that. Could you tell me more about bring love to things? What does that look like
Um,
or feel like?
yeah, so, I could be making love to Rahi, and a part of me could come forward that, like, um, I don't know, let's just say a part of me that gets scared about something,
Mhm.
like gets scared about saying, oh, I actually would prefer it this way. Because maybe that part of me is afraid that if I interrupt the moment or say what I really want, that I'll lose the connection, that he won't be interested. So
Mhm.
if I actually like voice that, bring that to the surface, and then he can be like, no, I want
Mhm.
to give you that. I want to make love to that. And then we can consciously actually like make love to the part that is afraid.
Yeah. So it's like integrating these our wounds is what I'm
Mhm.
hearing. Integrating these pieces of ourselves that we're afraid of, or like that we feel shame and shadow, to use that word shadow around, but being present with and inviting it in, it integrates into the whole.
Yeah.
That's precisely it. I mean, what we find is the higher the deeper the erotic states, and the longer the lovemaking, and the more free and unattached we are to inviting whatever it is that wants to come up, we really often do touch into these very vulnerable young parts of ourselves. And when those young parts are met with the kind of love and pleasure and affection, that we hold our lovemaking with, it rewrites the whole story in the body. Those aspects, that may have been hidden in the shadows or not welcome now get to integrate and become more whole, and lovemaking is such a beautiful container for that.
Right. And then that scared part isn't so scared anymore over time.
Mm.
And that translates to how I show up in all areas of my life. And it's easier to advocate for myself, to say what I think, to use my voice with anyone, anywhere.
Yeah, I remember learning like 30 years ago when I was going through my first monk training, and we were talking about the shadow and integrating the shadow. And I'm like, well, why do we want to integrate the shadow? And one of the teaching is that the shadow or the part, it's the fragments, the parts of ourselves that we've severed ourselves from, that we've shut away. But also, not only do these parts carry the shame and the judgment, but they also carry these jewels. They also
Mm.
have these talents and these gifts and these pieces of our identity that have been fragmented. And
Mhm.
so I love that, like what I'm hearing is like you're creating this container of love with each other. And that container of love is an invitation for these wounded pieces, these wounded places to arise and to be embraced and welcomed into this container of love.
Yeah, yeah, that's really well reflected. And I must say, like, I've learned so much, in our partnership, in my love with Ariel, because she's so attuned. Like, she knows what I'm feeling sometimes moments before I do, and invites that forward, so that my little boy and my younger selves that never felt safe to come out and play, when we make love, they feel the invitation and the permission to come out and play. And it's like now when I'm going to CVS or Whole Foods or wherever, it's just all these young parts that come out and interact with others.
The joyful, playful, liberated, and unburdened pieces of
Yeah.
Yeah,
ourselves. That's because
Unbur-
Priestess Ariel is going to
yeah,
say, Priestess Ariel.
yeah. Watch out if you think you want, watch out. Making love to her is an alchemical experience.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe it.
And then in like higher states of arousal, we can really start to experience this like merge energy and kind of go into realms of expanding consciousness. right? We can go into kind of like this we space. It's a similar space that I find a lot of people talk about when they're describing psychedelic journeys that bring them into a space of feeling belonging with nature, with themselves, with everything. Um, so like in what I mean by the higher states is like if we think about a pleasure scale from 0 to 10, 0 being no arousal, 10 being climax,
Mhm.
like maybe like a 7, 8, 9, you can really go into this merge energy. And I find in those higher states of arousal, we can really start to get like downloads
Yes.
and really expand our vessel, our body's capacity to hold a lot of erotic charge, which is a lot of sensation, which again expands to holding any and all types of sensations in all areas of your life.
Okay, so building our capacity to hold intense sensations of pleasure also builds our capacity to hold intense emotions that are maybe not necessarily as enjoyable. But we're building our container. We're building the capacity of our container to hold and not explode.
Yes.
Yeah, and be with.
Right. And that can invite just more goodness in our life in general.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's such a reflection. I feel like when the erotic charge, when the nervous system feels safe, holding more and more intense erotic charge, then it can feel safe and know that it's good holding any kind of charge out there. And
Mm.
so there is the compassion and love of our inviting our childhood wounds and our inner children to come forward. But the erotic element is also important because it's alchemical and transformational.
Mhm.
Tell me more about that. Why is the erotic element specifically alchemical and transformational?
Well, Devi, it is so fascinating, and I know you know this. It's like that pleasure scale from 0 to 10. What we have found is that the sweet spot between 7 and 8, 8 and 9, and 9.99, it's actually more delicious than the 10
Mhm.
you know? Because I think what most people consider a 10 is climax, and then there's the refraction period. But when we live in the in the nines, we have this term in our lovemaking, riding the nines. We love riding the nines. And then, we've got to eat, we got to go to the bath. We come back and we continue riding the nines. And this can go on for days and weeks.
Mhm.
And, it somehow opens up like awarenesses come to us, downloads come through us, and we start kind of like attuning to each other's like feeling sense, thought sense. I mean, our whole like body of work in our online course kind of came through those states of
Mhm.
erotic alignment.
Erotic alignment. Yes. And I remember when I was writing my book Shake Your Soul Song and I was doing research online about like what's happening in the brain as we approach orgasm from the perspective of brain wave patterns, not like the different areas of the brain that light up, but like what are what frequency is the brain aligning with at these higher, these deepened or higher states of arousal. And it was getting into like the delta wave, the theta waves and the delta waves. And those waves are what help us, that allow us as humans to connect with our divinity. Though delta is like union consciousness, that's union with all the
Mhm.
divine. It's God consciousness, they call it. So, quite literally, riding the nine
Mhm.
aligns us with God consciousness, our universal consciousness as humans. And how beautiful and amazing is it that making love connects
Mhm.
us to God?
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Yes,
Yes.
it's the ultimate. It's the ultimate. And then, to share that journey, that magic carpet ride with your beloved,
Mhm.
it's like it
So special,
I mean,
so
I really
acidic.
I feel like this is why I'm here as in human form,
Yes.
right? Is to share this with the
Mhm.
area.
Yes, yes. And I'm wondering when you're riding the nine and you're cultivating this bliss, and then you go out and you go grocery shopping and you go out and you do your daily life. I'm guessing is that nine, are you carrying that nine with you into all daily activities? So it's like the reason that like monks sit and meditate for 12 hours a day, but you're cultivating that in in your union, and then you get to like move through the world in this bliss.
Yeah, just kind of like buzzing,
Yeah. Yeah.
very loud.
And sensitive and
Yeah.
attuned.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, part of me wonders, like, like indigenous cultures, like in Peru and other places, they were so attuned to the elements of nature. They could hear the trees talking with each other.
Mhm.
And part of me wonders, like, is this, if we stayed on this track and deepened the knot and stayed in this nine zone, could we hear the animals speaking to each other?
Mhm.
Could we hear the leaves like whispering to each other? I think that's where it comes from.
Well, I will tell you, living in Costa Rica in the jungle, absolutely yes. I'm not even always cruising at the nine, but yes, she speaks.
Hmm.
And relaxing and opening into an internal expanded state is what allows me access to hear.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah,
hmm.
very much. Yay.
Yeah, I feel like so much of um, writing the nines and sex as meditation, sex as medicine, it's really the shedding of these layers of conditioning, that like our unconscious just absorbs being a member of this society. And when we're in those nine states, it's like this shedding that happens, and then we can go out and be closer to the trees and closer to the nature of our nature.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I love that. You can resource it anytime you choose, right? It's
Mhm.
not dependent on anything external. You can
Mhm.
resource this experience, this bliss, this ecstasy anytime you choose.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
empowering. Yeah.
Yeah, it's empowering and it's sweet. Like I can be on my walk and just, remember how Ariel smells or, her touch or, how, and then it's alive in my cellular memory. That energy it ripples through my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's such a balm for the
Mm.
violence that is embedded in our culture of sexuality that we are all swimming in. That
Yes.
is performative, that is objectifying. Um, yeah, it's really, really a balm.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Well, just that it's objectifying, it's violent, and it's of a taking
Right,
nature.
it's extractive.
It's extractive, exactly. Like, right? It's like I feel like sex and the way it's held, the way it's portrayed in media, certainly the porn culture, it's really taking something from someone else, which is the
Yeah.
opposite of like yielding and surrendering together.
And from your own body,
Yes,
right? People do it to themselves, they do it to other people.
totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Extractive is the perfect word, and it's exactly reflective of our culture. It's
Yeah.
Hmm.
extractive, right? It's what can I get and for how little can I give and how much can I get?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is the opposite of divine lovemaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I even think about how, like, the way I think about what we're doing in our lovemaking is sex magic.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
not the type of sex magic that, right, we're told about, which is again extractive and like, let me use my sexual energy to manifest more money.
Yes.
Instead of like,
Extractive, exactly.
Hmm.
let me work with the sexual energy in my own body, the sexual energy that is generated between us like, to heal ourselves, to heal the world, to listen to how it wants to move through the world.
Yeah, I was always very as a lineage based on Trika, I was always very confused about the sex magic conversation about like you press the storage and you shoot out the top of your head so you can get a new car. And I'm like, that's not
Right.
tantra.
Right.
Making
Right.
love to realize enlightenment. Like that's what I want
Yeah.
to manifest. I want to manifest freedom from suffering, right? And we do that by relaxing and letting go of attachment, not by cultivating more attachment and shooting an orgasm towards it. I mean, it was very
Totally,
confusing
totally.
to me. But
Yeah,
that's what you get when you mix tantra with capitalism.
Right.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, what you described, the extract, it's just such a pure reflection of capitalism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, in order to get to these expanded, amazing states, we need to build trust and intimacy. So, you all teach about the 8 pillars of intimacy. What are those?
Yeah. So the 8 pillars are slowing down, pausing, noticing, accepting, trusting, valuing, attuning, and communicating. And the thing about these 8 pillars is, right, they are like all of the skills that are really necessary to cultivate deep intimacy with ourselves and anyone else. And they're skills that we're going to continue to cultivate our entire lives. But attunement is actually a culmination of all the skills I mentioned before that. And I think of attunement as presence plus moment to moment responsiveness. And I like to think about consent as a practice of attunement.
Okay, tell
Yeah.
me more about that because that's juicy. I want to hear more about consent as a practice of attunement.
Yeah, well, a lot of the way that we're taught about consent is like in a binary. So like yes or no. Once I get it, then okay, I got it and cool, we just keep going forward. But consent is really a dance between energies that are constantly shifting, and so much of consent is about um, both seen and unseen power dynamics. And power is shifting and moving between two people, between everything, like in every moment, in every single interaction. So to really be in consent, one, we need to be in consent with ourselves in order to be in consent with another human being. But to really even feel into what is true for me right now, what do I want, what do I not want, you need to be able to do all these things of like slowing down and pausing and noticing what's even happening for me. Accept it as true, not bypass it, push it away just because you don't like it. Value it enough to like take up space with it, to make it important and follow it.
Hmm. How does trauma fit into this? Because we're talking about a deep level of self-awareness. And I know for me, my journey of healing from trauma has been cultivating being able to actually notice, oh shit, there's something going on inside, pay attention to it, attune to it, like you say, but then also believe it, also
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
honor it. And that, that's part of the journey. That's such a big part of the journey. So
Yeah.
how do you address trauma in this work? And when we don't necessarily have the ability to either self-attune or honor what's arising.
Mm. Well, I mean, I feel like what's brilliant about the 8 pillars is that it really meets any nervous system at where they're at. So
Okay.
if someone is highly traumatized and maybe they're used to going into a freeze response, maybe they're just working on slowing down, right? And that's the most important practice, day to day. And then they can get to a place where they practice their pause and they're just practicing saying pause, whether, as an exercise, right? And then the noticing, I mean, if someone is very embodied, they might notice the excitement, in their solar plexus. And if someone is coming in and out of free state, maybe they're just noticing that they're not, they can't feel into their solar plexus. That's a noticing. So, like each of these pillars really meets the person wherever they're at. And so it's almost like 8 steps wherever you're at to deepen your attunement. And for one person, it might be the beginning stages of that practice of attunement, and for someone else, it's like deepening their mastery.
Mhm.
Devi, I really resonate with your journey. Of so much of your journey, as was mine, is being able to even honor, to even believe myself of what was true, and then be able to honor myself. And I think that ties me back to that word you used earlier, Rahi, of compassion,
Mm.
and having compassion for ourselves and where we are, and like, um, you know, trying as best as we can to like uh, remind ourselves that the confusion is because of what happened. So, like, confusion is embedded into the trauma. And right now, I'm working through the confusion, and that's okay. And the practice is just, continue asking myself, what do I need? What do I want? And I might ask myself for a month and not know the answer for a whole month, but just keep asking and keep listening.
Hmm. And this is really where letting go of that goal-oriented intimacy really comes into play. Because if I have this goal, I want to crank out, 3 orgasms tonight, then I'm not able to attune to what's arising, or I will push down and avoid, bypass what's arising to meet that goal, right? And I
Mhm.
love that the first pillar is slowing down, because I'm like, we can meditate just on slowing down for like,
Totally.
like we could just
Totally.
keep on with that, because like
Yeah.
slowing down, and that is really the key to that attunement, right? And I would
Mhm.
say that the slowing down is really the key. Like that is what we don't get in our society. Our society is actually really like, so many have to bypass and push down to keep on grinding just to survive. So
Mhm.
that slowing down to pay attention to ourselves is huge, is such a huge piece of that reclamation for me.
It
Yeah.
is huge. It is huge. And, one of our students pointed out that the first seven of the eight pillars are all internal experiences. The noticing, the accepting, the valuing what it is that you're feeling, your experience, trusting it, and it's only the eighth that's actually communicating it to your partner. And the other thing I want to note is, to your point, if you had a lovemaking afternoon of just slowing down, how rich and intimate would that be?
Mhm.
I mean, just so sweet and delicate, so much more intimacy, terrains to explore than rushing towards what you already know.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and when there is a lot of trauma, I think a really magical tool is one-way touch practices. And this is magical for everyone, whether you resonate with having a lot of trauma or not. But in a one-way touch practice, there's not as much going on. So it's a lot easier to actually practice attuning to yourself if you get to just focus on your own experience of either giving or receiving, whether you're giving the touch or the one receiving the touch.
Yes, yes.
Well, we find that a lot of, I mean, I found over the years that, clients who've been married for decades, they've never explored one-way touch with their partner. And they end up just learning so much. It's just like so much about the kind and quality of touch that their partner never knew they liked,
Mhm.
or like, it could be the inside of a wrist or the sides of the torso that's never really been delicately explored, that it's like, wow, how come I didn't know this for 20 years? So
Hmm.
one-way touch is magical for so many reasons.
Absolutely. I remember when I would, again, many, many years ago, when I would coach couples, and the lingam and the yoni massage. And it really stood out for me how many men had, specifically, I know, women would as well, like don't necessarily have the time to receive, but particularly with the cisgender heterosexual men specifically, for them to
Mhm.
like sit and like be lavished and
Mhm.
just, like be honored in that way. Like so many of them just cried because it
Mhm.
just has not been in their experience to not have to perform, specifically when it comes to sexuality. I think cisgender heterosexual men specifically are so wired, they're so conditioned in this culture that you got to perform and you got to pound and porn culture and all of that. So for them to have an opportunity to be in the yin, the receptive place, and to receive just like the one way touch where they don't have to do anything but enjoy and communicate about their experience, was just so nourishing and so healing and so transformative. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Their little boys get to come out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And, yeah, it's so powerful. And I feel like a lot of what men are chasing for out there in greed and accumulation and Maserati, whatever these, symbols are, they're actually trying to make up for what's really missing in that slow, vulnerable reception.
Yeah.
Preach,
Right.
Rahi, preach.
And it's like the culture around sexuality tied in with the socialization of men. They're like taught to reach for sex, for climax, as soon as they feel any sort of desire. But desire, like often there's actually a desire under the desire,
Mhm.
right? There's like, as Rahi just shared, there's like a deep longing underneath the desire to feel fully met, to feel fully seen, and they're never going to get it by going for the sex, by going for the climax. There's actually a slowing down that has to happen, a listening to, And actually staying in that place before the resolution, before the climax, and building a capacity to just stay in feeling, deepening into sensation.
And that is also how they master their ejaculatory response, is learning how
Yeah.
to expand their capacity for sensation. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so many heterosexual men in this culture. I had something I was going to say and I completely forgot it now, so I'm going to just stop that. So I apologize. It was
But
right there.
we felt it, Debbie. It was so powerful. We felt it on this end. Yes, yes. But it's true. I think a lot of men don't even realize what they're deeply yearning for.
Okay, that's it. That was what I was going to speak to, is that I again have heard from so many cisgender heterosexual men that what they're actually desiring is connection. And that
Yes.
they have been conditioned to understand connection as penis and vagina, right? And
Mm,
they've been kind of amputated, I want to
mm,
say, from understanding different ways of connection. So they feel this urge, this desire, as you were saying, Ariel, this desire rise, and it's actually the desire for connection. But because of the conditioning, it gets channeled into penis and vagina, right? Or penis and anus, depending on how they rock
mhm.
and roll. But the true urge and the true yearning is for connection, which may or may not include genital stimulation.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm I mean, to that point, I remember one of the first Tantra workshops I ever did. We were lined up, we were soul gazing, we were breathing as one, and it was so much more intimate than a lot of the genital to genital penetrative experiences I had had. And my mind was blown. And that's what's like, I mean, it's one of the things that made me want to learn everything about Tantra.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 And
Thank
then
you.
on the other side of this, we have people who are socialized as women who are often taught to perform desire
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and often endure a lot, um, and like are afraid to ask for things to slow down.
Mhm.
Hmm
Yeah, yeah. I use the term "fuck through it." So, as those of us
hmm
socialized as women, we're taught that you just fuck through it. If it's uncomfortable, you fuck through it. Like, and conventional sex lasts 2 minutes, so it's kind of like you just kind of grin and bear it. It'll be over soon, right? It's
Yeah.
really not about my pleasure. It's about his ejaculatory orgasm, so he stays with me.
Right.
That's the subtext to
Right.
that
hmm
orientation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And the crazy thing is, when I just heard you say, so he stays with me, like what a lot of women actually want is for him to literally stay with me in the sense of really staying with my emotional body, my physical body in the way that it wants to be met.
Yes, yes. But again, we're conditioned,
hmm
Yeah.
because of the lack of the resources, right? If the only thing that's in our face is porn culture, and our
Yeah.
current, lack of sex education, if that's the only thing we know, then we don't know that there's alternatives. Some very lucky people like us,
Yeah.
kind of like intuited that there must be something else, so we went out to find it. But for so many people, it's like we don't know anything else unless we're introduced to the possibility of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Our society doesn't know what it doesn't know, and the tragedy is like slowing down, going back to the connection.
Hmm.
It's the bomb for everyone, and yet everyone's bypassing the actual, you know, medicine that we're all yearning for.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
So
also, I would say, like, our bodies have been conditioned to override that medicine or to, discard or to deny it.
hmm And so, again, as we're talking about this, what keeps coming up for me is, what about for those who are afraid to slow down because they're afraid of what may arise? What about, we're talking about this connection. What about the fear of being seen, the
Yeah.
fear of authentic connection? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, one of my peers in Europe, she always says slow is the fastest way. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that. And it really, I mean, there are a couple of elements that are necessary, but I think safety is like the prime one. And once a nervous system that may have never experienced safety may even feel threatened by safety because it's it will, so much can come up when we finally experience what it is we've longed for, but it makes us realize how much we've missed it our whole lives. So there's so many pieces that are necessary. It needs to be safe for the nervous system, but also move at the pace of the slowest part, which is something Ariel says a lot. You've got to move at the pace of the slowest part of you.
Yeah,
That's
and I think
beautiful.
also, it can be really helpful to find a place that feels safe enough for connection. So for me, that was with nature before people. So I started to allow myself to be seen by the trees or be seen by the sky or the ocean, and even started to like move erotic energy with the elements. And I did all this for years before really doing this with another human being.
Yeah.
And like again, like just starting where you are, like maybe where you are is that like you can start with finding or even finding connection with like an animal, but being really conscious about, can I really let this animal like see me right now? And I'm going to see the animal and we're going to have this really nice, cute cuddle exchange together
Mhm,
and
mhm,
expanding from there. So find wherever you can experience some sort of connection and
mhm,
expand from there.
mhm. Yeah, so cultivating a resource of safe, digestible connection, and then anchoring there, and then slowly, gently expanding outward based on
Mhm.
your own capacity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what about using pleasure as medicine to rewire these wounds, to rewire these places where we are uncomfortable, or we may feel blocked, or we may feel constrained?
Mm. Well, I feel like pleasure is medicine in that regard. I mean, like you can speak about it on different levels because from, a genital de-armoring perspective, I'm a big advocate of finding the resources of pleasure in order to start to rewire the areas of numbness or pain, but then emotionally as well. I mean, when, like if Ariel or I I mean, the other day was a great example. We had a little fight during our love lab. Fridays are devoted to love labs. And then we made love through it,
Mhm.
and that wasn't to deny, the emotions that were coming up, but being present with that and letting the pleasure like gradually consume the other
Mhm.
emotions. And then we got to a place where we were in so much pleasure that the conflict just seemed trivial.
It dissolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use pleasure physiologically as medicine to rewire tissues and sensory, perception that has been wired with pain or violence. But you can also transmute emotions with pleasure as well.
Yes.
And pleasure, I think, is really foundational. It's like basic nourishment. And, just taking it into a bigger picture, um, we can use it as a resource to move through and to hold what feels unbearable.
Yeah.
So I mean, right, when there's so much tragedy and violence all the time, and like, how do we hold that? How do we keep ourselves going through that? I mean, there's so many ways we can find pleasure, right? We can sing, we can dance, we can touch ourselves, we can be touched by another human being, but not denying the grief, but meeting the grief with some pleasure
Mhm.
and staying with the grief and having the pleasure resources through it until it transforms into something new.
Yeah, I love that you said pleasure is the most basic form of nourishment. I mean,
Mhm.
it truly is, and how we're born. Like we come into this world with pleasure as our compass, pleasure as our guide. Pleasure is just a normal, natural human thing to, want to wallow in and bathe in and bask in. And then how we're conditioned to fear pleasure and have
Mhm.
shame about pleasure. And only certain kinds of pleasure are you allowed to experience. So, cutting us off from our pleasure, this culture cuts us off, divorces us from our birthright to pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, I
believe
mean,
that's a trauma.
that
Yeah.
is, and I would say all living beings seek
Yes.
out pleasure. You
Amen.
know,
Amen.
animals, trees, I mean, anything that's alive
Hmm.
is gravitating towards the sun for to fe- you know, for the nourishment, to feel alive and to feel connection. And that's who we are as a species.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it is, it's like breathing air or nourishing our body with food. You know, pleasure, it nourishes the soul with aliveness.
And it nourishes the energy body. So it builds a healthy, vital, vibrant, strong energy body. And there are chemical responses in the physical body that increase our health and our immune system and all that stuff, right? So it's
Mhm.
like literally a thing. It's a scientific fact, if we need to go
Mhm.
there. But it is on the energetic level and the physiological level, pleasure is nourishment.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this kind of circles back to the question around, um, working with bodies that have been deeply traumatized, to start wherever you can. I mean, maybe the pleasure is in the form of food or, as Ariel shared, like being in nature.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be sexual at first,
Mhm.
but allowing that to start to permeate
Yeah.
and to, yeah, really be inquisitive and curious how these pleasurable sensations can be experienced in so many different ways.
And start to like the image I get is like rebalance. So there's all this pain and suffering, and the pleasure is
Mhm.
like filling our cup with pleasure to like rebalance the
Yeah.
scales, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So something that I had been thinking of before, and just want to state now that in terms of expanding our capacity for sensation, expanding our capacity for pleasure, I think it's just important to name that it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. And I
Hmm.
think we just need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So
Hmm.
even in talking about like transforming trauma and that sort of thing, it really, came up strong for me to share with the audience as well, is like we're going to have to be willing to move through uncomfortable feelings. And uncomfortable feelings are not the end. They're just a stepping stone on the journey, and that there is brilliance and beauty and openness and expansion on the other side. And you can look to people like myself and Ariel and Rahi and all the wonderful, amazing people on our show that are embodying the reality that there is something on the other side of pain. There is something on the other side of those uncomfortable feelings. And so the reality is in our journey to claim ejaculatory orgasms and multiple orgasms and divine union and all of that, we're just going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes. And again, that's something that our culture really doesn't want us to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel it's important to name that.
It is so important to name. Yeah, I like to think of like if we have an arousal dial and like pleasurable feelings are on one side and uncomfortable feelings are on another. It's all just arousal, it's all sensation. And we don't get to expand into one without expanding the other. It's just literally not possible.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, and also I mean, Ariel often talks about how grief and pleasure are two sides of the same coin. And the deeper you can really go into experiencing and embracing and welcoming your grief, the deeper your pleasure capacity expands as well. So,
Mhm.
to Ariel's point, it is all sensation. And yeah, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, Devi, because, I mean, sometimes I have clients who come and they're like, they look at it as a kind of an efficient business thing.
Yep.
Okay, in 3 sessions, I want to be here,
Mhm.
and it's a really sacred journey of revisiting those parts of ourselves that didn't have enough time or the space or were denied, spaciousness to really be seen, felt, and met. And that's where the healing happens
Yeah.
and where the pleasure then opens up.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I even find this really interesting process that it's almost like existential grief that follows opening into a new level of pleasure and connection. Because I open into this new level and then I'm like, oh my God, I've been missing out on this. And then I have to move through that grief, and then my system kind of recalibrates to that new expansion as my new baseline.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. I was going to ask you the relationship between grief and pleasure, but you explained it so beautifully. It's that mourning that of what has been kept from us,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? And which is our birthright as humans. what has
Yeah.
been lost, and then the joy of that reclamation, but also the grief of not having had it before, or even being aware of it before, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Beautiful. So let's talk about using nervous system attunement as an aphrodisiac. How can we turn ourselves and each other on with attunement? Because we've talked a lot about attunement, but attunement as eroticism or as an erotic support, that's different for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best foreplay there is.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, if we're really wanting to have the experience of like divine union, of that merge energy, that one consciousness that is possible only when two bodies can actually yield and surrender, which is only going to happen when there's enough safety that you've built within yourself and in the relationship between you to go into that deep state of surrender, to go into that like level of pleasure moving through you.
Such deep
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I find that the biggest turn on is when, Ariel does attune to my nervous system, knows where I'm at, and meets me there, and even kind of knows where I am and comes underneath to support my nervous system where it's at. I mean, I can't imagine anything more intimate than that. So it is such an aphrodisiac. It is such a turn on, and it is so intimate that you just want to merge.
Yeah.
You want to meet and be met there.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you if I just think back on like previous sexual partners I've had and like the lack of attunement that occurred in that relationship and the way it played out, like as an example, just really not being able to meet me in my needs or
Mhm.
not being able to put energy into the household or something like that. How much of a turnoff that was, and how I just like actually wouldn't want to have sex with them anymore.
Yep.
But when someone is like listening to what I need and putting an effort to attuning to my physical needs, my emotional needs, I'm like, yes, I want to give myself to you. I want to have sex with you. I want to make love to you.
Yeah, it meets such a deep human need to be seen and known and heard,
Mm,
right? It's
mhm,
such a deep human need to be seen and heard and known. So that seems like that's the needs that are fulfilled through attunement,
Mhm.
mhm.
as you're describing.
Yeah, I feel like we have, as people who function and have many responsibilities in society, there's almost a default, um, I wouldn't say hypervigilance, but kind of a bracing. And when someone attunes to your nervous system, it just melts
Yeah.
that bracing. And so there's just a yielding,
Mm.
and yeah, you just want to be a puddle, and you
And
just
it's
want to.
not intellectual. It's a total somatic experience, right? It bypasses the brain. It bypasses intellectual functioning. It's a felt sense.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. Yeah. 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 And so some people may not even realize why they're melting. But when you're being met in that way, there's nothing to brace against.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, so before we go, let's talk about playing the pleasure scale. I love that concept. Tell me what that looks like.
Well, um, so we've established the pleasure scale of 0 to 10,
Mhm.
and playing the pleasure scale is simply, a combination of meeting in this case, like when I'm meeting Ariel's body in where it feels like it wants to be met, on the arousal or the playfulness or the emotion. And then we find that oftentimes we're so attuned that our arousal scales kind of mirror each other in the
Mhm.
building.
Mhm.
And so when it gets to, anywhere from a 4 to a 9, we're able to kind of downshift if it gets too hot,
Mhm.
or kind of build up the arousal if we want more spice. And we're like consciously, but also surrendering to how the energy wants to go and wants to
Mhm.
lead us. How
Mhm.
does this lovemaking want to play us as the instruments of its music?
Yeah. Beautiful. And you can also do this in your own self-pleasure practice.
Mhm.
Like you can be like, oh, today I really want to explore like the 3 to 6 range. Like, what are all the different sensations I can explore there? And you can just really get to know every different place that exists from 0 to 10.
And I love that you said what you said, Rahi, about this music that wants to play through our bodies as instruments. And I
Mhm.
love, like, it's so sacred and divine, right? That every lovemaking session, every self-pleasure session is different. It has its own intelligence, it has its own flavor,
Mhm.
and it truly is like universal energy playing through our bodies based on the causes and conditions that are arising in that moment. And that's so much of, again, the letting go of the goal and
Mhm.
surrendering to the moment and just being present and allowing ourselves to be played as instruments by erotic love.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, our erotic nature. And that, I mean, coming back full circle to letting go of the goal, right? It allows for just unimaginable terrains of erotic intimacy to be played through us.
Yeah.
So how can people find out more? How can they learn how to play their bodies as, or allow their bodies to be played by the erotic energy of love?
Well, we have a virtual self-paced online course at divineunionforlovers.com. And people can take that on their own, but they can also take it with customized support from us,
Okay.
um, or also with even an addition of in-person sessions.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So it's an online course, self-paced. They can go at their own pace, but then they also have backup support if they want it.
Yeah, and we have a solo path and a path for couples.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what's included in that course? Could you give us a little outline of what it entails?
Sure, sure. Well, we've talked a lot about the 8 pillars of intimacy.
Hmm.
So that's like a foundational because, I mean, it's no surprise, but studies show that the deepest, the biggest indicator of sexual pleasure is actually the relational and emotional connection, between two intimates. And so we focus a lot on that as a foundation. But then, as we've been talking about one-way touch, there's a whole range of one-way touch demo videos. There's genital mapping, one-way touch. There's how to explore the body for the giver's hands, one-way touch. Um, there's lovemaking that's non-penetrative. So we really go through all the ways that we can play that pleasure scale, as the music that wants to come through us.
Yeah, and then if you do bring penetration in, to orient to it as a meditation.
I love that.
And
Love
yeah,
that.
and there's so much in that course. Like we have a lot of videos and informative handouts on working with different nervous system states, if how to work with triggers, how to hold grief and disappointments as a doorway to a deeper connection and intimacy. It's a very thorough, rich course.
It's very meaty, and we wanted it to be very practical and applicable, to singles or couples, at any stage of their relationship.
Beautiful. Thank you. And where can folks find that again?
Divineunionforlovers.com.
Okay, beautiful. And we'll include the link below this episode, of course. Well, thank you so much, Ariel and Rahi. It has been an absolute pleasure to powwow. I'm gonna that may be
Yeah,
politically incorrect, but it definitely feels like a meeting of the minds, and a meeting of the
totally.
masters, I will say. So it's been wonderful, wonderful to share this time and space with you. And thank you so much, all you wonderful listeners. Please go ahead and check out their work and their incredible offerings and learn more about Rahi and Ariel. See
Thank
you
you so
next
much for
week.
having us.
Thanks, Devi. Great to see you.
You've been listening to Sex is Medicine, your #1 resource for holistic sex education.
Make sure you like and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on all your listening platforms and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, where you can get your daily dose of Sex is Medicine videos and episode recaps. Also, make sure you register for your weekly dose of Sex is Medicine at holisticsexologyinstitute.com and send us your questions, please, at questions@holisticsexologyinstitute.com. Thank you so much for listening to Sex is Medicine.